So sorry about my voice. It's not all there, so if it sounds a bit weird to you during the podcast, just ignore it. It's still good enough to film an episode. Yeah, we just had practice yesterday, so it's not all there. But anyway, welcome to Let's Be Real podcast. I'm your host Nisha, and for those of you who don't know, this is a Christian podcast that the Lord put on my heart last year to start. And the intention behind it is to create space where we have difficult conversations. We talk about the real stuff and not just airy fairy Christianity, not just airy fairy walk with the Lord, not picture perfect walk with the Lord. Because I know sometimes we want it to look picture perfect, but the honest truth is that it isn't. The honest truth is that sometimes we screw it up. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes we want to give up. Sometimes we can feel the weight of carrying our cross more than other days. And that's just the truth of it. The journey of holiness, the more we're honest about everything, the more we're real about everything, the more accurate picture we'll be able to paint of the journey of holiness. So I believe, I pray, I hope that you guys, that we all would be set free, encouraged, convicted, and stirred by the fire of the Holy Spirit as we have these conversations, as we engage in these conversations, as we hear these conversations. And even if you're not Christian right now, even if you're not Christian yet, I believe that when you're sitting in conversations like that, you're always going to be stirred to hunger for the Lord, to go deeper with the Lord, to find out who the Lord is and more about Jesus. So, yeah, that's really the heart behind Let's Be Real. That hopefully that explains why I named it Let's Be Real. So anyway, today I was going to share what I have open and what the Lord's been stirring in my heart the past few weeks, but I thought about it and felt like I should share my testimony because I've been asked about my testimony, well, part of my testimony. I've been asked a lot lately, how did I get saved? When did I get saved? What did that look like? And people who know me back then, people that meet me now, they're like, when they hear my testimony, they're like, I can't see it. But then people who knew me before are like, no, God has to be real if he changed you. So it just made sense to me that I shared my testimony on one of the episodes. And I just felt like, yeah, why not now? So I grew up in church. I grew up in a Presbyterian church, a Samoan Presbyterian church, and I didn't understand anything. I didn't understand the preaching, didn't understand the teaching, and so growing up, I'd say the only real revelation I had of God was that he was real. And I don't know if that was really a personal revelation. That was more because I was raised to believe that. I come from a family of Christians, a family of strong believers in God. And so it was basically built into me that I believed in God. And so other than that, I didn't know about having a relationship with God. Didn't know anything about that. And I didn't know my real dad growing up. I only met him when I was like 16. And I was a really timid kid. I was really fearful. I was really insecure. I was really scared. Like, I'd say I was the black sheep in my family. I don't know if I was the only black sheep in my family, but I was definitely what you would consider a black sheep. I didn't really feel like I belonged anywhere, which is a bit hard to explain because I grew up quite close to my family, but still feeling like something was missing. I never really felt like I fully fit in, not just in family, just everywhere. So I know that was probably more of a me thing, but I just didn't ever feel like I belonged. And that probably was birthed out of my father wounds now that I'm like saying it. Now that I'm saying it all out loud, because I used to think about him and like make up. I didn't know him, didn't know anything about him other than that he was like in and out of jail. But I always wondered like why he never came and got me, like didn't he want me, like, all the thoughts that you kind of think when you're a kid. And I know, like, obviously I didn't know, I was too young to know or understand what happened or what might have happened between my mum and my real dad. But that didn't change how much it weighed on me, and I guess how much that impacted my perspective and my view of myself and my own life and my own voice. Because I had my grandpa. My grandpa was the best, but it just didn't fix the wounds of not knowing my real dad, of wondering why he never came and got me or anything like that. But yeah, so that was that. I say all that to paint a picture of kind of what I was like when I was younger: timid, quiet, shy, insecure. And then when I hit around 12, 13 years old, I was sexually abused for a while. I was sexually abused, and that was like a real turning point for me. That definitely hardened my heart. That made me numb. That made me rebellious to just everyone, anyone. And I was just angry. I became really, really angry, really careless, didn't care about consequences. I started drinking at 12 years old, started smoking probably around the same time, and I was just always in trouble. I was always angry. And everything that I felt before, not fitting in, misunderstood, that all just intensified after that, but in a way that left a bitterness in my heart. And I can look back now and see that was definitely a cry for help. But in that time, I was just angry at anyone and I blamed everyone. And yeah, I was extremely bitter, extremely angry, really careless, really rebellious. And I was going out with I used my older cousins to kind of get out because they had freedom, but I didn't have freedom unless I was with them. And so, I was drinking. They would take me to their parties that they were all invited to, and I would tag along and get as drunk as I could. I was smoking and all of that. And I was always in fights, always in trouble at school, suspended all the time. I got arrested. I mean, it's not funny, but I'm like, saying it all together now, that it just feels like that wasn't even my life. Yeah, I was on probation for a few things. Cops would come to my house. It was just chaotic for everyone, I think. Even my cousins, I had a few interventions from my older cousins. But while I knew that their heart was good, it probably fueled more anger in me because it made me feel like I wanted to be saved. Like I wanted somebody to save me from what was happening, in what was happening on the inside of me as a result to what was going on or what had happened. And obviously didn't communicate it the best way. Even the fights I was getting into, like the trouble I was causing, I guess no one could see how troubled I was. And so around 14, maybe, still on this, I dropped out of school maybe year 8, and I moved to Brisbane on my own because of everything that was going on. I ended up moving to Brisbane alone, and I got pregnant at 14. And that, I wasn't scared or anything. I was actually excited because I felt like that put boundaries on me that made me think twice about consequences or think twice about getting high and not having to come home, like just stuff like that. And but everybody else, understandably, I was really young, took it really hard. And I heard people say things like, oh, she threw her life away and she's gonna have no life and she's too young, and everyone was freaking out about it, and that wasn't normal. Like, I think like most people didn't know anyone that had a baby that young. And I know we went through a thing where that started to get quite common, but at that time, like, it wasn't common at all. And so everyone looked at me a certain way for sure. And yeah, after I had my son, by the time I was 15, I had my son and moved back to Melbourne. And obviously, I wasn't as crazy, but I was still drinking and smoking. I was still unhappy. I was still miserable. I was still not, to me, the best thing, I couldn't wait till the weekend to get drunk because that was fun to me. And I remember getting to the point, I don't remember what the order was, but I just remember getting to a point where I was so depressed. I was miserable in my life, and nothing was really wrong. Like, there was nothing really wrong at that point, and I was probably like, maybe I want to say 16, 17, and I was still going out, still partying, and, was with my family, but I was miserable in the relationship I was in, miserable with my life. And I remember getting to the point where I waited for everyone to go to sleep, and late in the night, and I went and sat in the living room, and I was drinking by myself, crying because of how miserable I was, couldn't make sense of anything. My heart was numb as well, like, to everything. I just felt like I didn't have compassion for anything. I couldn't, I just had numbed myself so much that I couldn't feel a lot. And I even remember driving. I remember this so clearly because now I realize it wasn't my own thoughts, but I was driving at Broadmeadow Shopping Centre, and there's a road between the mall. If you don't know, there's a Broadmeadow Shopping Centre mall, and the mall was here, a road was here, and the library was there. And I was just driving, and I remember having this overwhelming thought of, I'm never going to be anything. I'm going to be a loser, and I'm going to have no life, and I'm going to be I'm going to be someone who's old and still hanging around the station with no life. And that's going to be me because of what I've done. And I remember having that thought and accepting it and believing it and just being sad about it, but I was like, well, that's just what it is. And then, around that same time, I think my mum started going to, this family church, and I had to go and was thrown into a worship team, but I still didn't know the Lord. I was in the worship team by force, but I was still smoking. Like, after the worship sets, we would come out and have a smoke, and obviously horrible. Obviously, if I could go back, like, knowing what I know now, I would have never ever done that, but I didn't know. And nobody told me. It was the leaders that forced us on the worship team, and they knew, like, we weren't hiding what we were doing. And so to me, the revelation of God, like, didn't get deeper than that. And eventually we started going to youth rallies, and I remembered going to this youth rally, and it was from, I want to say, Sunshine VOC in Melbourne. And I went to one of their youth rallies, and it was at this big hall. And they were singing, and then there was this one girl who was on fire for the Lord, and she was preaching her heart out during worship. And I remember thinking, I want what she has, and the boldness that she has. And I think the picture of someone who's saved by this time, I'm like 17 or something, 16, 17. The picture of someone who served God or who was like, actually saved was like, man, their life must be boring. Like, that's what I thought. It was like a relationship with God is for the elders, it's for older people, it's not for young people. And young people who are like walking with the Lord, their life must be like in a shell, like super boring. Obviously, that's not what it is like now that I know. But then when I saw her, like something in me switched and I started to get hungry, but I still, not all the way hungry, but I started to seek out God more around that time. And I started to go, planet shakers and things like that. And I started to encounter God more and more and more. And I started to fall in love with God more and more and more. But I was still smoking and I was still drinking. But I was honest with God about it. It wasn't something that I was hiding or ashamed about. And eventually the drinking just stopped on its own. Like, I just didn't want to anymore. The more I fell in love with God, this is when things started shifting. Like, the time around when things started shifting for me, I started falling in love with God. And as I was naturally falling in love with God, the desire for the worldly things started to fall off. And I started to not want to drink anymore. And because it came by being washed by the love of God, I didn't even get tempted by it. Like, when I would go with my cousins, like, I just didn't even care. Like, I would be with them still having fun. But more and more slowly, I felt even more out of place with the things that I used to enjoy. I used to love going out. I used to love drinking. I used to love smoking. I had so much fun. But my palate slowly started to change. But smoking was something like I couldn't kick. Like, I liked smoking and I didn't want to stop smoking, but I was still pursuing a relationship with God. And I remember Planet Shakers were bought over Reinhard Bonnke. Yeah, sorry, Reinhard Bonnke. And I didn't know who this was, but everyone was the church was making a massive deal about it. And I remember deciding, like, oh yeah, okay, like, I'll go to the service. And it was a night service. And I remember that day, I wrote a letter to God and I said, God, I want to be set free from smoking because I know you don't like it. But I like smoking. And I want to stop smoking. But if I'm being honest, I don't want to stop smoking. So I need you to help me. And that was it. I forgot about the letter, left the letter, and I must have been like 18 by this time. And so by that time, I was a chain smoker. I'm pretty sure I kicked the drinking by then. I was over that. But the smoking, I couldn't shake it. And I was having 2 or 3 smokes in order to be fine. I couldn't smoke just one cigarette. I had to smoke 2 or 3 to be fine. So we get to the service. I have 2 or 3 smokes before we go in. And I see who Reinhard Bonnke was. And I was like, I definitely judged him. Judged the book by its cover. Because to me, he was like an old guy. Like, a bit frail. Like, had an accent. And I was like, oh. I'm like, okay. Well, I'm here. But I was totally wrong about him. He was on fire. He was one of the best preachers I had heard at that time in real life. And we were getting to the end of his message and he was gearing up for altar call. And I just remember feeling overwhelmed and encountering the Holy Spirit probably for the first time. And I was trying to stop crying, but I just couldn't stop crying. And because it was the first time and I'm weeping like a baby, I'm thinking everyone's looking at me and not realizing like everyone's having their own encounters. Like, no one even cares what's going on with me. But I'm like trying to hold back the tears because I'm so worried about everyone's looking at me, whatever. And then Reinhard Bonnke says, if you need a miracle, lift your hands. And I have both hands lifted, and all of a sudden, like, I have this vision. And at the time I didn't know it was a vision, but to me, I thought I was just imagining things. And so, like, my eyes are closed, my hands are lifted, and I see this silhouette, maybe like a silhouette of a chariot, coming to me, coming towards me. And it stops maybe like a meter to the left of me, and I see a silhouette of Jesus come out of the chariot, walk towards me, and he stands right in front of me. Well, my eyes are closed, my hands are lifted still, and I'm still weeping, and I'm still thinking I'm imagining things. And then Jesus' hand, Jesus raises his hand to my hand and puts his hand on my hand, and I immediately feel heat on my hand and through my whole body. And I knew something happened. Literally at that second, as soon as Jesus touched my hand and my hand started to feel heat, I instantly felt I was set free. I knew I was set free from smoking. Like, I was like, what just happened? And I wasn't sure. Like, I knew that was gone. I knew I was clean from it. And then I responded to the altar call, and still in my mind, I'm like, was I really set free from smoking? And I remember starting to have these thoughts like, maybe this is just in the height of it. Maybe the craving for smokes will come, like, when the hype dies down. And it didn't. One day passed, I didn't want to. 2 days passed, I didn't. A week passed, 2 weeks passed, and I didn't. I knew I was set free, and from then there was no stopping it. I knew I needed to have the Lord. I knew without a shadow of a doubt that God was real, but not in a way that he was like a far away God, but in a way that he was close. And I needed to figure out how I could have more of him. And it was literally like that scripture, I've tasted and seen that the Lord is good. And it was like I tasted how good my life was with the Lord, even though it was just like this much. Like, it was like a glimpse. That encounter with the Lord was like a glimpse of what it was like to be with him. That feeling that I felt was only a glimpse of what it felt like to walk with him. But it ruined me. It ruined me for anything less. I wasn't interested in anything else. I was midweek trying to find who was having a worship night, trying to find anywhere that was having a worship night or a prayer meeting or somewhere I could be sharpened even more. I was so hungry, and I would watch like 3 preachings a day because I was so hungry for the Lord. I was so desperate for God that I had to have him. And I just, from that time on, like, I never looked back. And that's not to say that I did it perfectly, but I knew what my pursuit was from there. My pursuit of God was like unshakable. Even when I had thoughts, like, sometimes I did want to give up. Sometimes I was like, what am I even doing? Like, do I even want to do this? But there was something from that time that was so deeply rooted in me that I couldn't shake it. Like, all I wanted to do was be seated at the feet of Jesus. And, well, I mean, I guess this ties in with the other thing I was going to share, but in a different way. But from Luke 10, verse 38 to 42, where it's sisters, and I'm just going to read it. It says, as Jesus and his disciples continued on their way to Jerusalem, and they came to a certain village where a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. Her sister Mary sat at the feet of Jesus, listening to what he taught. But Martha was distracted by the big dinner that she was preparing, and she came to Jesus and said, Lord, doesn't it seem unfair to you that my sister just sits there while I do all the work? Tell her to come and help me. Verse 41, but the Lord said to her, "My dear Martha, you're worried and upset about all these details, but there's only one thing worth being concerned about, and Mary has discovered it, and it will not be taken away from her." And verse 42, where it says, there's only one thing There's only one thing worth being concerned about, and Mary has discovered it. That was literally me. I was only concerned with one thing. I didn't know church politics. I didn't know all the right things or the wrong things to do. All I know is that I was addicted and I was miserable. I was depressed. I was drinking. I was a chain smoker. I had been hurt. I'd been abandoned by my real dad. I'd gone unprotected for so long. My heart was rock solid. I was a teen mom, had nothing going for me. To having this encounter, to experience God come into my life, and I just wanted to sit at his feet. I was desperate to find him. I was desperate to have him, and there was nothing, no one could shake me off of that. And I was in a relationship still with my son's father, and I wasn't married to him, and obviously, I was having sex with him out of marriage, even when I was falling in love with God still. But I remembered wanting to do the right thing, and I remembered praying, and I said to the Lord, while I was with him and I got saved and I had all these encounters, I kept feeling like something was missing. I kept feeling like something was missing, and I would get to certain heights in my relationship with the Lord, but for some reason I couldn't sustain it. And I was sitting at the feet of Jesus and I was desperate for him, but maybe sustain it is the wrong word, but there was just something missing. And I remembered going into the bathroom and I was crying and I said, "Lord, please tell me if this relationship, give me a sign. I need you to tell me in a way that I'm going to understand, in a way that I'm going to know it's you. I need you to help me and tell me if this relationship is for me, if I'm supposed to be in this relationship." And the Lord confirmed so many times that I wasn't supposed to be in that relationship. And I kept saying, "Oh, no, another sign, another sign, another sign." And then, didn't listen to the Lord out of fear. And then I just got to the point where I was just so fed up with feeling like that something was missing and not knowing what. And I just said, "Okay, Lord, if you tell me one more time that I'm not supposed to be with him, then I won't be with him." And the Lord confirmed it with me. How he confirmed it with me is another story, girl. I'm not going to get into that. That was just messy. But I was like, "Okay, I hear you, Lord." And I cut it off. And I was scared. I was worried. I didn't know what I was going to do. I was a young mom. I was a single mom. I didn't have anything it looked like I didn't have anything going for me. And to me anyway, it was a big step of faith. It was a massive step of faith to do that. And so I did it, and he went back to his family. And I'm not kidding. The second that man went back to his family, I didn't even get back home before it happened. It was like a complete download. I had clarity. I had visions. I knew what I was supposed to do. Like a confidence came to me that I knew it was from the Lord as soon as that man left my life. Not left my life because obviously we have a child together and I was somewhat connected to him in that way. But as soon as he moved out of my life in that capacity, in a romantic way, in a way that I was in a relationship with him, I was completely set free in a way that the encounters that I spoke about before, I was set free in one way, but once this part was gone, I was completely set free, and from there there was no going back for me. I pursued the Lord with everything I had, and still to this day I still I'm still pursuing the Lord. I'm still, sometimes I've been Martha, like that story that I've read. Sometimes I'm guilty of getting caught up in the detail, but my heart, true heart's desire is to always be at the feet of Jesus, is to always be found at the feet of Jesus. And yeah, that's my testimony. That's kind of how I got saved. I don't know if that all kind of, if I string that along really well, but that's how I got saved. That's the process of when I got to know God, but in a way that like had me in a chokehold, and then how God kind of set me free completely, and I've been walking ever since. I'm 32 now. I spent most of my 20s serving the Lord in an intense way and seeing the hand of the Lord, and just the more I served the Lord, it was like the more there was no way I could turn back. I I say I was ruined for less. Like I truly mean that. Like a couple years ago, I tried to turn back to the world because I was just stuff happened and I was so depressed, and I turned to alcohol to try and help me carry it instead of turning to the Lord because I was just frustrated, and I just couldn't. I couldn't. I was in that for like maybe like a month, maybe 3 months, a month to 3 months. I can't even remember, but I couldn't. It was like how the deep roots that God had put in me, how deep rooted I was in the Lord, like I just could not let that go. And so from that place a couple years ago, the Lord just came and got me. That's probably the best way to put it. Every time I felt like I lost my way, the Lord just came and got me. The Lord just kept coming to get me. Literally, He left the 99 to come and get me. And I can never go back. I can never go back. I want to encourage you guys who have been serving, anyone who's here, and if you've been serving for a long time, like don't forget the history that you might have with the Lord. And if you're someone who can relate to the beginning of my testimony, like if you know me now and you see all the Lord has been doing in my life, there's nothing special about me, nothing at all, other than that I was completely changed by the presence of God. I came from, you heard my story. There's nothing at all special about me. If anything, that should show you that God uses anyone, there's nothing too hard for God. We're never too dirty for God. We're never too far away from God. And there's nothing that we can be in that is too far for the Lord to reach in and get us. Nothing at all. Nothing. I've experienced that, and yeah, I pray my testimony encourages someone, sets someone free, pushes someone closer to the Lord, convicts someone in some way. I don't know how you'd be convicted by my testimony, but maybe I shouldn't say that. But anyways, I pray that blesses you, and I hope that made sense. I didn't stutter as much. I'm getting better. But yeah, anyway, I love you guys. I'll see you in 2 weeks. And yeah, be blessed.